It is my pleasure to introduce Dr. Kyle Miller, who I'm happy to call an inspiring poet and friend. It's no exaggeration to say that Dr. Kyle Miller is one of the Caribbean's premier contemporary writers. Educated in Jamaica, England, Scotland, Dr. Miller is the award-winning author of 11 books of poetry, fiction, and non-fiction, as well as editor of a collection of contemporary Caribbean writers. His work is internationally recognized. He's won the prestigious Ford Prize in Poetry, the Prix des Afriques, and the Prix Cavé de Caraïbes et tout monde for the French translation of his novel August-Town, the Ocean Bocas Prize for fiction, non-fiction, and poetry. And his current collection, the 12th book, is currently shortlisted and up again for the overall award. He's a fellow of the Royal Society of Literature and has been awarded the Silver Musgrave Medal, one of the highest honors for the arts in Jamaica. What is consistent across this impressive body of work is Miller's project of writing the Caribbean space, its landscapes, its people, its culture, its history, honestly, lovingly, and always beautifully. Sentence after sentence, line after line, novel after poem after essay, Miller both documents and creates a language that can hold the complexity of this palimpsest of a place, a language that is alive to the resonances of the Caribbean's varied and multiple encounters, that deftly handles the apparently competing realities of its violence and joy, its haunted past and insistent present, its seen and unseen, all of it summoned, witnessed, revealed. In his hands, through his words, place is simultaneously fully itself and transformed. So perhaps what we learn from Miller's work is that it's both things are and must be true at once. A global citizen, Dr. Miller's writing, is not only limited to the geospace of the Caribbean, but he brings his writer's eye to the colonial spaces of Europe, the UK, to the continent of Africa, to spaces throughout the global south, always looking for the place beneath the place. And I would dare say the place is within place. In Miller's work, the body is a place, the mind is a place, history is a place, memory is a place, Zion is a place, as is the unwieldy heart. Miller reminds us again and again that place is an agreement of meaning, and because who has the power to make, enforce, enact, or challenge those meanings shifts, so does the very idea of place itself. I invite you to join me in welcoming to this place, Dr. Kyle Miller. It is my pleasure to introduce Dr. Kyle Miller, who I'm happy to call an inspiring poet and friend. It's no exaggeration to say that Dr. Kyle Miller is one of the Caribbean's premier contemporary writers. Educated in Jamaica, England, Scotland, Dr. Miller is the award-winning author of 11 books of poetry, fiction, and non-fiction, as well as editor of a collection of contemporary Caribbean writers. His work is internationally recognized. He's won the prestigious Ford Prize in Poetry, the Prix des Afriques, and the Prix Cavé de Caraïbes et tout monde for the French translation of his novel August-Town, the Ocean Bocas Prize for fiction, non-fiction, and poetry. And his current collection, the 12th book, is currently shortlisted and up again for the overall award. He's a fellow of the Royal Society of Literature and has been awarded the Silver Musgrave Medal, one of the highest honors for the arts in Jamaica. What is consistent across this impressive body of work is Miller's project of writing the Caribbean space, its landscapes, its people, its culture, its history, honestly, lovingly, and always beautifully. Sentence after sentence, line after line, novel after poem after essay, Miller both documents and creates a language that can hold the complexity of this palimpsest of a place, a language that is alive to the resonances of the Caribbean's varied and multiple encounters, that deftly handles the apparently competing realities of its violence and joy, its haunted past and insistent present, its seen and unseen, all of it summoned, witnessed, revealed. In his hands, through his words, place is simultaneously fully itself and transformed. So perhaps what we learn from Miller's work is that it's both things are and must be true at once. A global citizen, Dr. Miller's writing, is not only limited to the geospace of the Caribbean, but he brings his writer's eye to the colonial spaces of Europe, the UK, to the continent of Africa, places within place. In Miller's work, the body is a place, the mind is a place, history is a place, memory is a place, Zion is a place, as is the unwieldy heart. Miller reminds us again and again that place is an agreement of meaning, and because who has the power to make, enforce, enact, or challenge those meanings shifts, so does the very idea of place itself. I invite you to join me in welcoming to this place, Dr. Kai Miller.
All right, hi everyone. And just, thank you, Lauren, for that. Just wonderful, generous, astute introduction that makes me sound brighter than I am. And just thank you for having me. I always thank everyone for inviting me to places because you have to put up with me because I don't like emails things like that. So I imagine organizers are like, yeah, we want to hear, but God, you're annoying. So thank you, Matt, for smiling and still being here. And let's just start with this. Sometimes I consider the names of places. New York, as if York was not enough. New Orleans, as if Orleans was not enough. New England, as if England was not enough. The New World, as if this world was not enough. I guess that just speaks to where my project often begins, or where my project began. As you'll see in the Cartographer, that kind of subsequence of place names, and just thinking through that. Because places don't become places until there is a name. And if that is what place is, if place is that thing that happens when humans interact with a landscape, then what is in that name? So that just begins my fascination. I guess that sequence, the place name that runs, that's begun to run through many collections. Other than that fact of names, introducing a kind of nostalgia, that places become echoes of other things, that landscapes have to, repeat something that the colonizer was trying to remember and hold on to. There are other odd things that happen with names, right? And I'll read some of that sequence. I'll probably start with this one. I guess I should say a big part of my fascination, especially coming from Jamaica, was if the people in a landscape are not allowed to write their history, how do you find it? And oftentimes I found that happened in the names of a place, that you weren't allowed to record a certain kind of history, but if I listened to the name of that place closely enough, it could unlock something about that place. So I'll read a couple of these. Minosen, place name, Minosen Yunakon. This poem just tells you how I grew up, how my mind started to work at way too young an age. Because the story of Goldilocks just always disturbed me, right? Isn't it just a disturbing story, right? So we know that this little girl, racialized as white, because she has golden locks, so she's racialized immediately in the story. And she goes into the house of, let's just say, dark people, right? And it's not just that the bears are like the dark people, but we know that they're like middle class, like upper middle class bears, right? Well, seriously, because they have, there's furniture there, there's a porridge, but they've gone out on a walk. Like how freaking British is that? They're perambulating through the woods, these upper middle class bears, and this child walks into their house and breaks things. And when the dark people come back, in some versions of the story, that they growl because they're angry someone's in their house, but they are depicted as the savages. And if you come from where I come from, that story is really familiar. Right? So anyway, place name. Minasen Yuna come in plain English, do not enter without invitation. For consider the once upon a time adventures of rude Pitney answering to name Goldilocks. Nuff-gal, self-invited into house of bears, assumed at once her colonial right to porridge, to beds and to chairs. The Bathan child went in just so, not even a token offering of honey, and just like that proceeded to brook up things. If only she had pennied the secret names of places. Minasen, you not come without invitation, you are not welcome, or else come in as you please. Just know that this ground, these bushes, these trees observe you with suspicion many centuries deep. So place name Shotover. I mean, this is definitely one of those poems where I think the name just unlocks a kind of history. It's in the poem. I actually asked them, how did you get this name? And the man in the house, I'm going to switch to Jamaican Creole, I'm sure you'll understand. The man in the village said, yeah, so in Buckymaster days, Buckymaster ad was to catch by the runaway slaves, so he would bust gunshot over there and gunshot over there and gunshot all over the place, and so we call the place Shotover, which is not how they named the place. But I love this explanation. I love that he had a kind of agency to, that in his naming he recorded a kind of history. But this is what actually happened. Place name Shotover. So it's Shotover. Shotover. Place name Shotover. So named because my people, little acquainted with French, could make no sense of Chateauver. And talk through Mr. Bakra, that was too stush a name for your house, green and fresh. You said no, it did just mildew and old, a house which like yourself has since returned to the fold of Portland's earth. But oh Mr. Bakra, if through the muffle of mud you should hear us traipsing on your ground and one of us asking how it come about the name, you will discover when victims live long enough they get their say in history. Well sir, an old man answered, in them their Bakra days Buckymaster and was to catch back the runaway slaves, so he would draw for him long musket and was gunshot over there, shot this a fly, pashai all about the place. And so comes we get the name. And I'll read this, probably not the last one in this series, I'll read one more after that. I got commissioned to write a poem in Buckingham Palace, or for Buckingham Palace. What had happened was this, my friend Lizzie, like that. So Buckingham Palace put on display their gold, and there's a big thing that people could come in, and they commissioned a poet to respond to this display of colonial gold, and they asked me, which was really stupid, right? And the truth is, I didn't realize the poem was as political as it was until my phone was buzzing and I saw all these tweets. I can't believe Kai Miller read that in Buckingham Palace. But yeah, I just went back to this series and I was thinking of a place in Jamaica called Oracabessa. Place name Oracabessa. Origins disputed, but most likely leave over from the Spanish Ora Cabeza, golden head, though what gold was here other than light glinting off the bay, other than bananas bursting out from red flowers, though this too is disputed, not the flowers, but the origin of bananas. They may have come here with Columbus on a ship which in 1502 slipped into Oracabessa the way grief sometimes slips into a room. In those days, the sailor tried to name the island Santiago, as if not knowing we already had a name in another language,
a language whose speakers would soon all die, though this too is disputed, not the deaths, but the completeness of genocide. For consider, if you will, such leave-over words as hurricane, consider barbecue, consider Jamaica, land of wood and water, but not of gold. Could someone please go back in time and tell Columbus, in Taino there is no word for gold. Christopher Columbus, in Italiano Cristoforo Colombo, in Espanol Cristobal Colon. A teacher once told me Colon is a root word for colonist, and though I know that was false etymology, there is some truth to it. Orocabessa, place where you might find such tranquil villas as Golden Ridge, Golden Cloud, Golden Eye, longtime home of Ian Fleming, who sat there on cliff's edge, the morning's breakfast brought to him by a woman named Doris, the scent of ackee and crisp fried breadfruit wafting up to his nostrils, while between his teeth he bit a number 2 pencil, all the time looking out to sea as if fishing for a story, maybe a man, an incredible man, let's call him Bond. James Bond, who knew 007 wasn't actually Scottish, but a barefoot boy from St. Mary, Jamaica. Like so many others, he too migrated the brutish winter, cooling his complexion down to white. Such stories, Goldfinger, Golden Eye, the man with the golden gun. Did you never stop to wonder where all this gold came from? Did you never stop to ask what was found in El Dorado? Well, let me tell you, not a nugget, not an ounce of ore, but light gilding the bay, and perhaps bananas, and perhaps ackee, and such language as could summon wind to capsize Columbus's ships. And if that's not gold, then what is? So, I guess part of this fascination with places, and again, if that is the idea, or that's the idea in my mind, that, which is I guess a social geography, there is space and then there is place. Place only happens when humans interact with the landscape. And how does the land resist? Does the land have any agency in these moments? And I guess part of the idea that I'm trying to work through is that inextricable to place is displacement. It is impossible to have place without displacement, whether that displacement is human or that displacement is trees and wildlife. Place is impossible without displacement. Place is impossible without violence. And if you are writing about place, you have to reckon with that. You have to reckon with the displacement and the violence that is inherent in the meaning and the making of place. So I'll read just a last one of those place name poems. Place name, wait a bit. Gateway to cockpit country, observe the sturdy acacia gregge, cat claw, devil's claw, wait a minute or wait a bit tree, strong maca that can hold you and juke you and draw blood like murder. Place named not for patience but for landscapes that scrape, name like bright yellow caution, careful man, this here is bruising land. So going on from that idea, so yes, I think about places and how they become places. But I guess this poem I was trying to reckon with thinking of the landscape before it becomes a place.
And I guess there was just one little idea that was at the heart of this point. If you think about a landscape just kind of stretched out before you, and you introduce to that landscape a house, then you've effectively invented two spaces. You have, only with the introduction of that house, you have now invented inside and outside. And so these things change how we think about the landscape and how we interact with it. Here that was here before. This whole, all the poems in this section of this book, in Nearby Bush just begins with that word here. And I'm just trying to evoke what this here is. So, yeah. Here that was here before. Here that was here before the invention of doors, which was the invention of the outdoors. Before the invention of town, which was the invention of the outskirts, the peripheries. Before the invention of gates, which was the invention of the outside, the outsider, the barbarians in wait. It should be noted there are many kinds of gates and many kinds of barbarians. In Jamaica, the gates of Kingston produce a kind offensively called Hutu. Here, that was here before the invention of keys, which was the invention of a lie. The world was somewhere else and we could close a door to it. Before the invention of curtains, which was the invention of spying nervously in your own backyard at night. After the dogs bark, the motion sensor lights come on. You can see everything except what is behind the curtains. Before the invention of burglar bars, which was the invention of an accidental art installation in Hope Pastures, Jamaica, a house surrounded entirely by steel like a doll house in a bird cage. Before the invention of boundaries, which was the invention of fences and the invention of countries, countries being the invention of men wearing clothes the color of trees, patrolling the arbitrary lines, the dark promise of rifles. Before the invention of stamps, which was the invention of bureaucracy, which was the invention of embassies, which was the invention of old women gathered hopelessly on Hope Road, the corks of their sweat glistening on their foreheads. And here that was here before the invention of here, which was the invention of there. Before the invention of distance, which was the invention of letters, tear-stained, held tight in the hands of women gathered hopelessly on Hope Road. Before the invention of place, which was the invention of the world as we know it now. Before the invention of time, which was at once the invention of now, and the invention of after, and the invention of before here, that is here in the now, and that was here in the before, and that shall be here in the after, that shall hold our bodies, our cities, our outdated stamps in its endless cycle of green and brown and flower and thorn and stone. Alright, so I'll read a very strange point, because Jamaica is a fantastic place, right? But strange. And so here's a strange thing that Jamaica did in 1987, I believe. So 1987, Jamaica, with this kind of post-colonial anxiety, I would say. You have to prove that you are as good as any country. And how it does that is, just odd. In 1987, someone decided it was a good idea, having a Christmas show in Jamaica, that we would get 6 reindeer down to Jamaica for this Christmas show. And they did. They got the 6 reindeer to come down and they had this Christmas show with the deer. They didn't know what to do with the deer after. So they took the 6 reindeer to, where Nigel is from, that parish, to Somerset in Portland, and they just had the deer there in a petting zoo. Then the next year rolls in 1988 and comes Gilbert, Hurricane Gilbert, this a hell of a hurricane that hit Jamaica hard. And it hits, the fences are completely destroyed, and the 6 reindeer, they scatter off deep into the hills of Portland, escape. The amazing thing, by the way, is that they take the exact same path that the Maroons did back in the day, and you know, they do what Maroons do. They build community for families. Anyway, a recent census said that the population of Jamaican reindeer now living in the hills of Portland is estimated to be about 6,000. But again, it's just, you know, these stories fascinate me because it's about displacement. How do places become places and all these contested issues? Anyway, here where run the wild deer. Here where run the wild deer, the Caribbean caribou. Does this surprise you? Deer without snow, not even the possibility of snow. Here they are like echoes of a long story, the brutal history of this place, which is not to say they are not their own stories, but that they know, as we do, the tightness of ships, and how to lose whole continents, and how to be wary of white men wielding whips, and how to end up here. There is such a thing as the perfect storm. It includes an actual storm, and deer in weak cages and the nearby bushes. How wonderful to escape into hills that have always been escaped. They are the new Maroons. At dawn they descend on quiet hooves to loot from the estates, but maybe that isn't fair. I shouldn't say estates but farms. On the 7 o'clock news, a man spreads his arms to show the field of ruined carrots. Have mercy, them nyam ever God Almighty thing. And then he faces camera, true story, but is looking somewhere beyond the absent harvest, his mind lighting on memory. But Jesus Christ, he breathes them so pretty, his face now a curious thing, as if ashamed or puzzled he should recognize such beauty, the nobility of their being, or accepting too late. This may have been their payment, the price of carrots to be seen. It is easier to hear the deer whose sounds are like doors on old hinges at nights. Listen, the landscape is creaking, as if these bushes open themselves to drunk men just now stumbling home. Here where the wild deer roam, here where dried branches may not be dried branches but the majesty of antlers, here where white flowers may not be white flowers but the blossoming of their tails, the strange warning of deer. We do not see well, but we sense you are here with us in this strange, strange land. Will you come now to the river? Will you teach us King Alpha's song and how to survive Babylon, how to belong where we do not belong? Here where blossoms the night. There's one strange reference to the Maroons again, and it's just so you know what's being referred to. It's about Nanny of the Maroons, and in Jamaica, Nanny of the Maroons is a famous heroine, hero of the time. But lots of kind of magical stories get kind of tossed at her, and one is that, you know, she's such a skilled in combat. I mean, she led him to so many victories. But one of the things that people say about her, giving her all these kind of magical powers, is that she could catch bullets in her ass and shoot them back. Just putting it out there, guys.
Here where blossoms the night. Oh, and there are just lots of. I'm trying to understand what's happening in the landscape of Jamaica. So this is just names of lots of things you'll find growing in the bushes. So there are lots of strange names happening, but I'm naming the landscape.
Your writing being about place and the creation of it, how do you think about poetry as place, and how do you feel like, I don't know, this medium interacts with that idea of like the landscape of words and all these different things?
Yeah, I haven't thought about it like that, as poetry as play. I mean, the quick answer, right, is that poetry is my medium, or is one of my mediums. But because I have this idea that, as I've said several times, that place only happens when humans enter landscape. And I don't know what to do with that, right? Like what do you do ethically with that? Because we have to live in places, but there's so much displacement that happens as a necessary part of that. I mean, that's one half, right? So I say that because to me, poetry is about language, and so immediately I am trying to capture something about this landscape. It's something that doesn't belong to it. It's something that came to it via humans. And so there's always that tension there for me, that I am trying to capture what is uncapturable. Or if I really want this place to be itself, I would not land it on it. Does that make sense? And so there's always that, for me, a kind of, how do you find language that doesn't feel like language, that can strip itself back, and so I don't think I do that thing of thinking that poetry is inherent to the place, or that I don't know if I'm answering your question, but it's there's always tension there.